Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural broadcast of the Motor City Madmouth Show. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and I am pleased to be joined by Mel Farr Jr. Mel, welcome to our first broadcast.
Hey Scott, thanks man. I appreciate you inviting me to be your first guest.
Oh, you know what? I got news for you, Mel. That was an absolute no-brainer. So, just so you know, the Motor City Madmouth has come over from the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network over to No Filter. And during the course of our time here, we're going to be doing one on one interviews as well as a lot of different types of topics. So I hope you can stay around here and build with us as I have a lot of different types of guests and so forth there. We encourage any participate in the chat room as well. So with that said, Mel, let's start off with your football family. Your your dad obviously played for the Detroit Lions. What do you remember about his career?
Not much. I was kind of young. Uh, uh, I was born 1966. He was drafted in '67. So I was real young. I do remember going to training camp sometimes, drinking all the little we call it pop up there in Michigan. I don't know what they call it in the South, but drinking all the little pop. My brother and I used to go up there and always drink as much pop as we possibly could.
Right.
I remember being around some of the players, coming to the house, going to their houses. Obviously, sometimes going to the locker rooms. Remember being home for a lot of the games too. They didn't take us to all the games, um, but I do remember the game where Chuck Hughes passed away.
Yeah.
Somebody was talking about that on Facebook, but I do remember that, and that was a pretty somber day. But as far as him playing, I don't remember a lot. I remember, kids would talk about him at school, and they were all in awe of my dad. And to me, he was just my dad. I didn't look at him as some sort of famous football player. Just looked at him as dad. But don't have a whole lot of memories of him. And then when he got traded to Houston, I remember kids were asking if we were going to move. That was the one thing people wanted to know if we were moving, and I was able to tell them no, we're not going anywhere because my dad decided that he didn't want to go to Houston. They were talking about building the football team around him. I mean, he turned down a big contract for back then, $100,000 a year guaranteed, and he said I'm shot, I'm done. And they're talking about building the team around him, and they played on the AstroTurf, and he said that was it after 7 years.
Well, amazingly enough, yeah. Joshua Dore, welcome to the No Filter Network. Glad to have you in here. I remember that Chuck Hughes game because I was at it with George Eichhorn. And, it's just one of those things you just never forget, Unfortunately for Chuck Hughes, it was an instant play. He just came back and ran, and then before long, he just passed out. And Dick Butkus was signaling for somebody to help the guy out. It was just one of actually, the Chuck Hughes situation does appear in my book, Lessons from the Microphone, which I want to let everybody know. I wrote a book, Lessons from the Microphone, and I talk about old school media versus new school media. And what Mel just alluded to, the Chuck Hughes passing away, is a story in it. So, with that said, okay, let's talk about your other family members as well, Mel. I know that DeMarco Farr and Mike Farr Jr. also played in addition to yourself. Tell me a little bit about the trajectory of their careers.
Well, DeMarco got a Super Bowl with the Rams. He was
Right.
much younger than myself. He went to University of Washington. Now I did play with his brother at UCLA, Andre Farr. Andre, I think, was a freshman when I was a senior, or he was either a freshman when I was a junior. I had to play 1 or 2 years with Andre at UCLA, and then DeMarco went on to Washington. And obviously, I played with my brother Mike, and he got picked up as a free agent with the Detroit Lions, and he went all the way to the NFC Championship game. I believe it was 1991,
Right.
and ended up losing to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys obviously went on to win the Super Bowl that year. But yeah, and my uncle played. My uncle played for a number of years. Uh, he was drafted by the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken, and played with the Chargers and played with the Oilers. And he played a year with my dad. My dad's last year in the league, my uncle played, and we're actually the first siblings, the first brothers father son combination to play in the NFL. They talk about the Matthews family. They've had a lot more, and there were probably a lot more heralded than our family. But we were actually the first set of brothers to make it to the NFL with my dad and his brother, and then me and my brother.
Okay. Let's talk about your college career at UCLA. You had the opportunity to play for Terry Donahue in addition to going out there and having the ability to be a part of that rivalry with USC. But let's talk about Terry Donahue. You said, Mel, that that's a guy that you have in high regard.
Yeah, I mean, the further away you get from it, the better understanding you have of your coach. My dad and Coach Donahue played with one another. They won a Rose Bowl with one another back in 1966. They won the Rose Bowl, I believe it was. And going to UCLA was always a dream of mine. I was born in Southern California, grew up in Michigan, but went back to California. California was my second home. Went back there every year. Spent the summers with my grandparents and my cousins out there, and so playing at UCLA was always a dream for me. I watched those games, those big games against USC on TV. Obviously, I was a big fan of USC as well, being a running back. Them being running back with OJ and Mike Garrett and Marcus Allen and Charlie White and uh, Ricky Bell, and the list goes on and on and on. So yeah, I was a big fan of USC, but when the time came for me to make a decision, I chose to go out to UCLA, and I have a better understanding of Coach Donahue, and I appreciate him because those friendships that I developed with those guys, those are lifelong friendships. I mean, we still communicate with one another on a weekly basis. We have a little chat, a little football chat that we have for the guys that played during the time in which I was there, and we're a very close knit group of guys. And he recruited good guys. They're good people, good human beings with good values. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that the type of players that he brought to UCLA and the type of relationships that I was able to forge while I was there.
All right. Well, you had an opportunity to play in the USC UCLA rivalry. What was that like? I know that for Southern California, but it became a rivalry game that was televised on national TV as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a big game. I mean, unfortunately, I was 2-2 in that game. Rodney Pete is the single reason why I didn't go to two Rose Bowls. They had some talent over there, and we had respect for one another. There's no question about it. We didn't, we socialized a little bit, not much. When we'd see each other out high by, we were friendly. But now I'm good friends with some of the guys that went to USC. When Rodney P got drafted to the Lions, and I think he got drafted late. I think it was the sixth round when Rodney P got drafted to the Lions, and I told Rodney, man, he can make that football team because he was the single reason why I didn't have two Rose Bowls. I knew what type of player that Rodney Peete was, and he had a very, successful stint there up in Detroit. But yeah, that was a big time game for us, and I love playing in the Coliseum. Growing up watching the great ones play in the Coliseum. By the time I got to UCLA, that was no longer our home stadium. We moved out to the Rose Bowl, but I love playing in the Coliseum. You see all those greats, those legends on the sidelines, the Ronnie Lotts, the Marcus Allens, Anthony Davis, Mike Garrett's, all those guys on the sidelines when we played USC at the Coliseum. So yeah, that was a big thrill, and watch the band come down the stairs and all that and do their little thing. It was a thrill to play in that game.
Amazingly enough, I haven't been to the LA Coliseum except outside of it. It looks like a pretty neat place, but that is a bucket list item for sure. So, all right, back to the 2024 NFL Draft in Detroit. I had the opportunity to talk to a teammate of yours, Mel Owens, who played for the LA Rams. Describe what your working relationship was like with Mel Owens. Obviously, was he a good friend of yours? I tell you what, he came across not only as a personable guy, but a very intelligent one, knowing full well that after his playing days, of course, everybody should know that he played college ball at the University of Michigan. But Mel is now an attorney out there trying to help players out as well. But let's talk about your playing days with Mel Owens.
Yeah, him and my dad, his dad and my dad got along well. My dad loved Mel Owens and loved Mel Owens' dad and mom, and they've had some great conversations, and were able to go on some trips overseas when we played in some of those games, those preseason games overseas, and they my dad enjoyed Mel Owens' family and enjoyed Mel Owens. I can tell you that. And Mel Owens enjoyed my dad, and I enjoyed playing with Mel Owens. He's a great guy, real helpful guy. Uh, you know, a guy who was who took his craft seriously, but not too serious. And him going to Michigan, obviously me being from Michigan, we kind of just kind of had that relationship. It was very competitive. I mean, Mel is a very competitive guy, but extremely good guy. And yeah, and as you mentioned, he's a very intelligent guy. He is an attorney now, and I think after. I think he helped me out with something with some workman's comp out there in California after my playing days were over. But yeah, Mel Owens is a good guy.
When was the last time that you saw Mel Owens?
It's been a minute. It's been a while.
As a
Yep.
Yeah, but it hasn't been a minute when you saw your man Mickey Lodich, though, was it?
Mike Lotus? No, no. Like I said, he's a UCLA guy, and I went to high school with him, so I see him. I might probably gonna see him once a year at a football game, and then I just happened to be up in Michigan the week after his father passed, so I made sure that I went up there and spent a little time with him just to let him know, and that I'm there to support him. I understand exactly what it is that he's going through, having lost my father 8 years ago. So,
Right.
almost 9 years ago now. So I know exactly, what that's all about.
Yeah, but I know a running joke that I have with your buddy Lodich is wanted me to send him. What does he think I'm Pat McAfee and I pay all of my guests? I mean, seriously, dude. You know what? Up until you mentioned his name, I never even heard of him. That doesn't mean he's not a good player, but I never heard of
No,
the
the
guy.
guy's got 6 Super Bowls. He's been on to 6 Super Bowls, six straight, if I'm not mistaken. I know he went to four straight with Buffalo, and then he went to two with Denver and won two with Denver.
Oh, that's right. He was played with John Elway too, didn't he? And for
Yep,
okay,
sure did.
in fact, it's hard to believe that he won that one in Miami, Super Bowl 33, I believe, probably. If
It's
he's
Super Bowl
won two with
33.
Denver, yeah. I was actually at that game. That's the first Super Bowl I actually had a chance to cover. All right, so let's go into some detail about your pro career and the highlights.
Well, if that's what you want to talk about, we're going to need more time. I mean, we don't need a whole lot of time, rather.
Well,
There
don't worry,
weren't that
I
many
have plenty.
highlights.
I have
You know,
plenty of things we can talk
back
about today.
then, this was 1989. So, and I hadn't even heard of it. That's really what's kind of funny. On the final cut, Coach Robinson comes and talks to me and said, "Hey, we're gonna put you on the practice squad." I didn't even know there was gonna be a practice squad. I didn't know anything about that.
Right.
I'm like, "What is that?" I mean, and he explained it to me. He said, "But you got to go home today. We got to release you, and then tomorrow you come back, and then we'll put you on the practice squad." So I just said okay, and I went home and had the day off and came back the next day, and I was on the practice squad. We did everything that all the players do. I mean, basically, we spend all of our time on the scout team, and the only thing that we don't do is we don't. At that time, we didn't travel. We got to travel to a couple games,
Right.
but for the most part, we didn't travel. And but we could go to the home games, but we didn't travel, and that's the only thing different. And we obviously we didn't get paid the same. We got paid $1,000 a week back then,
Right.
and so I spent the first 15 weeks on the practice squad, and the defensive back Anthony Newman broke his wrist or his arm or something like that, and Coach Robinson said, "Hey, you got to go home today. We're gonna activate you. We're gonna put you on the active roster, but we got to release you, and then we got to bring you back." And then so I got the day off again, and then I ended up playing in the 16th game, which was against New England, out in New England,
Right.
and then in the three playoff games. So we had a playoff game against Philadelphia, out in Philadelphia, and then we played the Giants in New York, and then we played the NFC Championship game against San Francisco up in San Francisco. So, kind of had a wild ride at the end. We ended up making the playoffs. I think we were a wild card team, but
Right.
we made a nice little run. But we ended up losing to the eventual Super Bowl champion, San Francisco 49ers.
So Mel, you talk about the practice squad. I mean, for a lot of football fans that are tuning in for the first time, why don't you let everybody know what the practice squad really is all about? How does that work?
Well, it gives you an opportunity to practice with the team. Obviously, you're a part of the team. and it's a little bit different now the way they do it, and it's different how they get paid. But basically, just need extra bodies for practice. So sometimes you don't want the guys that are going to be playing on Sundays to have to be the look squad for the defense because you only have a certain number of players on your roster. It's not like college where you have 100 plus players and you have a dedicated scout team. When the offensive period is over and the defensive period starts, then the offensive guys become the look team and they're running plays from the other team. And so it just gave them extra players to be able to do that with, so that your star players or the players that are going to be playing on Sunday didn't have to endure that. They were able to get off their feet. I found it fun. It gives you an opportunity to stay connected, and to continue to hone your craft, to get coached up, obviously, to watch the film just like everybody else, participate just like everybody else. But the only thing is, you just don't suit up. You don't suit up on Sunday. That was the only difference. And again, like I said, you don't get paid the same.
Yeah, I mean, but I'll tell you what, it's an opportunity. Now we talk about the practice squad. I want to get into something else called the United Football League. Right now, we're heavy in the spring football, and it's an opportunity for players to get film. We've also had the Canadian Football League a long time, but now I think the U.S. What are your thoughts about the brand of the United Football League? I think this league, which is obviously broadcast by Fox and ESPN, is off to a good start after the merger.
Well, I played in the inaugural year of the World League of American Football. That was back in 1991. And what's good about it is sometimes guys they need reps. The only way you can get better playing football is playing football. Lifting weights will only do so much for you. Running routes on air can only do so much for you. Playing 7-on-7 or 1-on-1, that can only do so much for you. The only way you can get better at football is by playing. And when I say that is, a coach has to have a certain level of trust in you, in knowing that you're going to go out there and do what you're supposed to do when you're
Right.
supposed to do it. And that's how that's how guys, that's how you make a team. It's a trust. If the coach doesn't trust that you're going to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, then you're not going to get a chance to play.
Right.
So having the opportunity to get more reps and playing in live game action gives puts you're putting more stuff out there on film, showing that you have the ability to go out there and do what you've been told to do. What you've been told to do in the classroom, you're able to translate that not just from the practice field, but also onto the actual playing field, and show that you actually belong and you should be given an opportunity to go out there and play at the NFL level. So I mean, and I've always been a big proponent of it, and I love the fact that the UFL is back there. There's a lot of guys that just for whatever reason, sometimes you could get, if you get drafted, you could get drafted to the wrong team, or the wrong type of team, or and things just don't work out for you. But just because it
Hmm.
didn't work out for you that time, just because one team said no, there's 31 other teams out there that might say, one of them might say yes. You just need an opportunity to put some more stuff out there on film.
Okay, so besides your dad, who did you love watching play? That's a pretty good question. I like that one.
Uh, well, growing up, I like watching OJ. As a running back,
Right,
I
O.J.
like
Simpson.
watching Jim Brown films.
Yeah.
I love watching, I like watching Marcus Allen. I love watching Eric Dickerson. I like watching Barry, Billy Sims, Earl Campbell. Running
Right.
backs. Those are guys. Obviously Lawrence Taylor, the guys like that. But those are guys, and then I like watching the Lions. We grew up big, having season tickets, and we
Right.
watched, went to all the Lions home games. So, watching Len Barney and Charlie Sanders, and like I said, Billy Sims. That was always a big thrill for me, and to see some of the players that would come in. Like I was there when OJ went for 200 plus yards
Right.
against the Lions on that Thanksgiving Day, and they still lost that game, because the quarterback, that quarterbacking was horrible. But yeah, I mean, I had an opportunity. I remember when I was a kid to meet Lester Hayes in the locker room. My dad took us down to the locker room. They were playing the Raiders, and I looked at him. I said, "Man, this is a big guy, man. He's a DB." Like, I don't know if I want to
Right.
play pro ball. I don't know if he's a DB and you look at some of the other guys. I'm like, man. So, but yeah, I mean, that was always a thrill being able to hang around the locker room and meet some of the guys.
I had an opportunity to cover Barry Sanders, and I'll tell you what, one of the most unbelievable people I've ever met. But not only that, a tremendous running back. There's no question he'd own every rushing record on the planet if he didn't retire a little bit early. So Joshua Dorr says, I hear your Mel, you was a great baseball player as well. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, my dad always said I was a better baseball player than a football player,
Yeah,
and
the research on
believe
that.
it or not, when I got to high school, I had missed a year playing baseball because I went out to California, and at the timing that I went out there, it was during baseball season. So I missed a year playing baseball. I think it was my ninth grade year that I didn't play baseball,
Right.
and because my cousin turned 16, if I'm not mistaken, so I went out there early, California early for my Sweet 16, for her Sweet 16 birthday party. So I didn't have an opportunity to
Right.
play baseball that year. And when I came back, I was in high school and trying out for the high school team. Um, two things happened. Number one, they put me on JV, and then number two, they switched my position. I was a pitcher and shortstop, catcher, anything in the infield. They moved me to outfield. I had no clue how to play outfield, to be honest with you, and it's a whole different feel out there. Um, you hear the ball get hit, about 2 or 3 seconds after it's been hit. So it's very difficult to judge fly balls. You have to learn all that while
Yeah.
you're, on the fly. And I wasn't trying to do all that. And I said, you know what? Uh, we were playing at a church that was probably 15 minutes from the school. Nobody's out there watching you practice. I mean, it's boring. I'm in the outfield. It's boring. There's no action out there. And I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna work on getting better at football. And I'm just gonna run track. So that's what I did.
You should have done. Well, what I did is when I was bad in the outfield, I became a catcher, and that was the best position for me. I was in the game all the time. I had no attention stand anywhere else but behind the plate. And I'll tell you, that was unbelievable. So Joshua Dorr was asking, are you involved in football right now?
Am I involved in football right now?
Yeah.
No, my brother and I we tried a hand at coaching my nephew. And that was an experience we'll probably never do again. But that was an experience. But it gave me an opportunity to spend time with my brother, spend time with my nephew, and
Right.
you know get build some relationship with some other kids. We coached against Dominic Blaylock, went on and played at Georgia. But him and my nephew played together in high school, and seeing what type of athlete he was at a young age. I mean, the guy was a phenomenal athlete at a young age. But that's the only thing that I've done football wise. We have our camp that we do for the kids who high school seniors who don't receive a Division I scholarship. We give them an opportunity to display their skills in front of Division II, Division III, and NAIA schools. So that keeps us, close to the game a little bit. But other than that, no, I don't really do much with football other than watch it on TV.
All right, for those of you joining us, my name is Scott Morgan from Motor City Mad Mouth. This is his debut of the Motor City Mad Mouth show on No Filter Network. I'm pleased to be joined by former Los Angeles Ram Mel Farr Jr. So as we continue to talk football, let's talk about the Pac-12. Okay, four teams are moving to the Big Ten: Oregon, USC, UCLA, and USC. Well, how do you think those four schools are going to perform in the Big Ten?
I think it's going to be tough. My brother and I were just looking at UCLA's schedule yesterday. We thought UCLA played Michigan this year, but I guess they don't. But they got some. They play Nebraska. They play Rutgers. They play Penn State at Penn State. They play LSU at LSU. They got a tough schedule. It's gonna
Right.
be it's. We've always done well against the Pac, or excuse me, against the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl. But having because we had, people think we have a different brand of football. We had a little more wide open brand of football when we were playing back then. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know. I don't know how the travel is going to affect them. I don't know how the size is going to affect them because the guys, are much bigger than our guys without question. Um, and speed, and then we have a new head coach. So there's a lot of different variables that are going to go into this season that are going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I think eventually UCLA keep my fingers crossed. Will the cream will rise to the top, and they will go out there and compete on the football field, and not just not on the basketball court, on the baseball diamond or the softball diamond or gymnastics. That they'll be serious about competing and competing for championships um, in football.
Well, we know Chip Kelly decided to bolt and went over to Ohio State to be what, the offensive coordinator. What are your thoughts about a head coach like him deciding to leave a school like that and then taking a job over as an offensive coordinator? It's a little different. I haven't seen that before.
No, I haven't either. But the college game has changed from when I played. There's a lot of different variables going on now, especially with NIL. And if you don't have the support of the boosters, the university to go after the type of players that you need in order to compete on a national level, that just makes your job that much more difficult. I don't care how well you are, well versed you are in the X's and O's. If you don't have the Jimmy and Joes, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to compete. So I don't know if that played a factor with Chip and him deciding to leave. I know that there were a lot of people who were not happy with Chip, and folks from UCLA who were hoping that he would leave or he would get fired. But I think he kind of did us a favor. We seem to be, now we got a guy, a UCLA guy, somebody who this is the job that he wanted, and hopefully, he'll be able to go out. He'll get the support that he needs from the university to be able to go out there and recruit the type of players that he needs in order to be successful on a national level.
Yeah, I know the one transition that each of those four schools are going to have to deal with will be the cold weather, snow, ice, and all that. So I don't think they see a lot of that, at least where they were at in the
No,
Pac-12.
it gets cool and rainy in Washington and in
Oh, yeah.
Oregon. I know we played Colorado my freshman year. This is when they're still in the Big Eight. We played my freshman year, and I was like the first time some guys from California saw snow. They didn't know what that was, and this was in September, but it wasn't really cold. We didn't get those real frigid games, and with any luck, they won't get too many of those frigid games either. The season doesn't go into December or anything like that, so November you can get some of those days where it's not so bad. But I mean, I know growing up in high school, there was a lot of tough days, and generally it's practices. The practices are worse than the actual games. But hopefully, they don't get any night games in certain places when the sun goes down because it can get chilly.
All
But
right,
they'll have to adjust.
let's go back to your dad. After his football days, he got involved with the automotive industry. Ford out in Oak Park. I know he had a dealership there. So why don't you talk about? Did you ever think about joining your dad in the auto industry at all?
Well, I mean, we did. My brother and I both did. That was always his dream to have his sons. Once we got done playing, we started, we transitioned right into working. So I had signed a 2-year contract with the World League of American Football. I played 1 year. I didn't go back the second year because at that particular time I was 25 years old, had a wife and 2 kids, and I was living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was working down there at our dealership down there, and I was the general manager of the store at that particular time, and I just felt an obligation to my dad, to my kids, to my wife at that particular time that enough is enough. You can only chase that dream for so long. Um, I always said, like Bo Jackson said, football was my hobby, but I knew, what my real gig was. It's kind of tongue in cheek, but so we started working in the business. I started working in the business at 25 years old. At some point in time, I was gonna have to retire and get me a real job. So I just did it earlier than some of the guys that I played with. So yeah, I worked down in Cincinnati for 4 years, and then moved back to Detroit, and worked at our flagship store there, and then we opened up a used car superstore. I moved over there. So yeah, I worked with my dad and helped the business become the number one, the largest African American business in the country. I believe that was in 1997 or 1998, with over $500 million in sales. It's probably that number pales in comparison to what these guys are doing now, but back then that was a pretty big deal. So we had a lot to be proud of. My dad was real proud of me and my brother, the way that we attacked it. Obviously we had the good work ethic and the discipline from playing football, but it just we just had to learn the business, and you know, eventually we did, and we learned it, pretty quickly. Obviously I had a head start on my brother because he was still playing.
Right.
So yeah, we had a lot of fun time, a lot of good times in the automobile business.
So, all right, well, Josh Shador has a pretty good question. Do your kids play football?
I only have one son. He played at Brown University. He didn't have an opportunity to play professionally or anything like that. He lives out in San Francisco now and got his own life and his job, and is doing great. But I only had one son, and I got some grandsons, but I don't plan on if it were up to me, they wouldn't play football. They play golf or baseball, but their mothers seem to think that they have some genes in them that seems that they want them to play football. So but I love my grandkids, so I don't want them to play football.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays we talk about the different advances in technology, but no matter what you do to try to make the game safer, the athletes are bigger and stronger, and the game is physical. The injury situation will always be there, regardless of when you played the game. Your knee injuries are going to happen, whether they happen in 1920 or versus 2024. It doesn't make a bit of difference. It still is a very physical sport, but some guys play in it longer, some do not. So let's talk about the event that recently took place in Detroit. This is your opportunity to let people know about your passion for youth football. You had a big gala there. Why don't you go ahead and describe what it was about? Unfortunately, I came down with illness at the last minute, but I will be there in August of 2025. But you had some pretty big people over there.
Yeah, so um, my sister had an idea. She's in the fashion industry, so she wanted to do something. Wanted to have a fashion show. Basically, it was just going to be a little small fashion show. And she looked at a billboard and saw that the draft was going to be in Detroit in the year 2024. And she's like, oh, okay, I got to do something for that. And then she started looking at the dates for the draft. And, you know, the day before the draft was going to be on February, or excuse me, the draft was going to be in April 25th, 2024. And she said, well, man, I can do something on 4/24/24, kind of, my play on my dad's number because he was number 24. So
Okay.
it was just going to be a little small little gathering, but the people that we brought into this, that were a part of this, that helped pull this off, really sharp group of individuals, well connected folks up there in the city of Detroit. And the next thing you know, the thing just took on a life of its own and became this huge event where we actually hosted the NFLPA and the NFL alumni meeting there in one room, and then we had a lot of former players there, a huge fashion show, a lot of photographers, a lot of media personnel there, and just turned out to be a real nice event that what we want to do is it's something that we want to do every year to help us fund our foundation, which is the Mel Farr Superstar Foundation, which is going to enable us to continue to provide those free camps for both the students and for the colleges that come. That's free for both of them. They don't have to pay for any hotel stays or any food or anything like that, any lodging. We take care of all that. The kids, obviously, they're there in that area. They just drive, their parents just drop them off or they drive themselves there. And they get to spend a couple hours in a combined type of atmosphere and get to display their skills in front of Division II, Division III, and NAIA schools. And at the end, it's kind of like a college fair where they and their parents get an opportunity to go around and visit the different universities and the different schools that have assembled there, and they get an opportunity to be presented with a package, whether it be a grant and aid package or some type of scholarship package. We know the money is out there. We just got to put the money with the kids that need it. And so that's what this camp is all about, is just marrying those two. They need kids, kids need money, and we bring the two together in one place, and they get an opportunity to do this once a year. And it's the smiles on the kids' faces. It just makes you feel good knowing that you're doing something good that's gonna help these kids in the long run. And some of these guys that have gone to these camps have gone on. Some of them have gone on to play in the NFL. Some of them have gone on to become coaches in the NFL. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's many different ways, and obviously some of these guys have gone on just to do great things in life. So there's many opportunities out there, many things that could, could happen for these kids. That's one less kid we have to worry about hitting us upside the head at the ATM trying to rob us. You know, and that was something that my dad was very big on was education. So that's why we kind of we use the football and marry it with the education, and that's something that we're very very passionate about.
Joshua Gore was asking, are you still involved with the auto industry?
Yeah, well, we still have our dealer license. My brother and I, we still keep our dealer license. I mean, I guess it's kind of in our blood. We don't do it on the same scale as we did it before. We're in the pawn business. We also have a package store, and then I'm also in the insurance business. I do insurance and investments, and also a mortgage loan officer. So we do a lot of different things. We're involved in a lot of different things.
So tell me what life has been like after football. You talked about some of the things you're doing, but what's life like for Mel Farr Jr. these days, other than the fact that you appear with me on a lot of shows at night and with your
Well, these days I try to spend as much time as I can with my kids and my grandkids.
right,
That's very important to me. My grandkids are everything,
right,
and I don't do a whole lot no more, a whole lot anymore. I used to play a lot of golf, Joshua. I don't play as much as I would like to. I do plan on playing. Actually, last year was the first time I picked up my clubs in probably 15 years because it's just been work, 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 work. And I plan on changing that because the only way that my kids are going or my grandkids are going to be introduced to golf is if I introduce them to it. So plan on spending some time with my grandkids on the golf course or the driving range and batting cages and different things of that nature. But most of my time now is just spent working and spending time with my grandkids and trying to figure out a way that I can retire a little bit earlier than most.
well, I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, now does a lot of your family live with you in the greater Atlanta area?
Yeah, all my family's here. My mom's here, my brother's here, my sister's here. Uh, I got my three daughters are here. I have three daughters that live here. I have one that lives in Houston, and then my son's out in San Francisco. But my daughter that's in Houston, she's going to be moving back here shortly. So I'll have all my daughters here, and then my son. He's out there, like I said, living his life, doing his thing out there in San Francisco. Proud of him. Obviously would love to have him here as well, but kids have got to live their own life. So he's out there doing his thing out there in San Francisco. But yeah, all of our family's here, nieces and nephews. Everybody's pretty much here. One of my nephews lives in Baltimore,
Right.
but my other nieces and nephews are here.
How many grandkids do you have?
Four. Got two here, and I got two up in Detroit. So I got a grandson up in Detroit and a granddaughter in Detroit. Then I got two grandsons here.
How often do you get to Detroit?
Not very often. When I went to Detroit in April, I had actually been up there. I was up there in October because we had the 40th anniversary of our state championship in October of last year. So the last time I was there prior to that was when we did our camp. So I don't get up there as often anymore. But maybe I'll get back there a little bit more often now. I don't know. I really have. There's no need. No nothing pulling me up there other than my grandkids. But I prefer they come down this way as opposed to going up that way. But I get up there often enough, I guess.
Yeah, I get there when I can too. This recently, I had an opportunity. I don't know for the draft, but bounced back up there inside of 2 weeks for the Tigers and the Marlins. So I actually enjoyed both trips. They were far different trips for sure, but they definitely enabled me to accomplish a great deal. So, just once again, this is Motor City Mad Mouth Show, our debut here on the No Filter Network. I'm pleased to be joined by former NFL running back Mel Farr Jr. Mel, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. I'm sure we'll be seeing you around, but it's been a lot of fun, and we hope for all you folks that are watching us on the No Filter Network that you can pop in and say hi to us. I'll be working toward bringing out a lot of great guests. We'll have some meaningful topics on the show. So, I've been in the business 44 years, which is why I created the book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. which you can get on Amazon Kindle as well. So, meanwhile, Mel, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next week on the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Thank you very much, Joshua Dory. You were great in the chat room, and we look to have a lot more people as the show continues to go. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
What'd you think?
Wait a minute.
Thanks. Yep,
Oh,
for everyone.